Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
So today we're going to talk about Shanda Sharer. Now, this case is quite a doozy. We've got quite a few people we need to discuss. Our victim is a 12-year-old girl. Her name is Shanda Sharer. We also have Melinda Lovelace. She's 16. Lori Tackett. She's 17. Hope Rippey. She's 15. And then we have Toni Lawrence. She is also 15. So we're going to talk about each one of them real quick. Well, not so much on the quick side. So I'll repeat their ages multiple times throughout because it blows my mind that they're all teenagers.
What year is this?
I haven't gotten there yet, but 1990.
I'm just trying to set the mode of.
Oh yeah.
I feel like if I can try to understand the timeline.
Okay. 1990s. So off the kick, trigger warnings. We've got suicide, attempted suicide, rape, domestic abuse, sex crimes against children under the age of 1, sex crimes, and sex crimes against children under the age of 15, incest, self-harm or self-mutilation, and burning alive. So this case is a doozy.
And one we have not done before.
Yes, we have. We're re-recording. Claire doesn't believe me. I did this one.
She's insane. She hasn't. I digress. Go on.
Anyhow, Shanda, our young 12-year-old, was the daughter of Jacqueline Bott and Stephen Sharer. Shanda's parents were divorced. Jacqueline remarried and moved to Louisville, Indiana. Shanda was a cheerleader. She played volleyball. She played softball in 5th and 6th grade. She was super active. But Jacqueline got divorced again and moved her kids to New Albany, Indiana in June of 1991. Now we're going to talk about Melinda Lovelace. She was born in New Albany, Indiana on October 28th, 1975. She was the youngest of 3 daughters to Marjorie and Larry Lovelace. Larry Lovelace was drafted into the U.S. Army during Vietnam. They say he was horribly emotionally scarred, but he was treated like a hero when he came home because he did fight for our country and all that. But he pretty much lost his mind. They said he was never the same again. His wife, Marjorie, would later describe Larry as a sexual deviant. Larry would wear his wife and their daughters' underwear, makeup. Yeah, he would wear their underwear and their makeup, and he would also cheat on his wife.
Just gonna say, wouldn't want that back, Dad.
No,
that little bit's yours. Keepers, okay. And from that point, I would be going commando. Just throwing it out there. Hey, I'd rather go commando than share my underwear with my dad. I'd rather go commando than share my underwear with anyone. But
I was about to ask, is there someone that you would be willing to share with?
Dave.
Dave, if you're listening, Claire wants you to be able to know that she will share her underwear with you.
Hey, if we're in a pinch, I'd lend them to him. They might be a little snug on him and give him a little bit of a wedgie, but I'd do that for him. I might tell him that later when he gets home. Just so you know, I would share my underwear with you, and then I'm just gonna walk off.
Please do it. Please.
I'm gonna just let that little nugget brew, and him be like, "What?"
Do it.
Anywho, so he's panty stealing and wearing them.
Yep. Marjorie reported that Larry was a jealous man. He also had a fascination, though, with seeing his wife have sex with other men.
Doesn't that also mean she was cheating then, or did he just have a fetish of like he dreamed of it kind of thing, but it never happened?
So according to her, she did not want to have sex with other men, but
He
he
made
would
her do
find
it.
other men to recruit to come have sex with his wife while he watched. So
Mm,
a little on the twisted side. Gets better though. Or worse, depending on how you want to look
yeah,
at
I was gonna say we're talking
it.
about panty sharing and
Sharing his wife.
voyeurism, so
Yeah. Well, he is all about sharing. Anyhow,
clearly.
yeah. In 1965, Larry became a probation officer with New Albany Police Department. He was fired because him and his partner assaulted an African American man who Larry accused of sleeping with his wife, Marjorie. They were not having an affair. He just accused him of it. And they beat
Well,
the crap
so
out of
far
him.
it sounds like everybody. I mean, that was a doorknob that was turned regularly.
That's harsh, Claire. In
That's what it
1988,
sounded like, is all I'm saying.
yeah.
So he can get upset now. Like, you're sleeping
So,
with my wife.
so I
All
think
right.
in his head, if it was somebody that he sought out to sleep
And,
with his wife, he
and
was
pick.
okay with it. But if she was doing it on her own, he was
Yeah.
angry. Does that make sense?
You know,
It doesn't make
that's kind
sense, but
of
it
an
makes sense.
interesting dynamic on that point, because it could very well be a control like thing that he gets to control who's going in her, and if she is, then it's not like a like he doesn't want her to enjoy it kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's even more disgusting.
Yeah. Well, he's a gem. And that should be a t-shirt, by the way. Like that could be funny. In 1988,
Coming soon.
in 1988, Larry worked briefly as a mail carrier, but he quit after 3 months because he did not like the work. He really just did, in general, didn't like working. And he would bring most of the mail home with him and destroy it rather than actually deliver it.
Hey, you
Yeah.
know what? Sometimes I feel like that's what our male person does.
Hopefully they are not listening to this. And if you are, please send Clara and Dave their mail.
Our consistent mail lady, she's amazing, spectacular. But when she goes on vacation or she's sick, whoever the fill in, I swear stuff would be marked as delivered, but it'd be like 3 days later if you got it.
Hmm.
Shit was weird.
Interesting. Marjorie worked on and off into the 90s. When both Marjorie and Larry were working and Larry wasn't being a douche, the family was financially well off and lived upper middle class life. However, Larry was violent and abusive. Surprise, surprise. He usually did not share his income with the family when he was on one of his benders, I guess. He would buy himself firearms, motorcycles, cars, just whatever he could blow his money on. And then he eventually filed for bankruptcy in 1980. So, extended family often described the girls, the three daughters, as hungry and not having enough food at home. So, it's kind of sad. But Marjorie and Larry would visit bars often in Louisville, Indiana. Larry would pretend he was a doctor or a dentist and introduce Marjorie as his girlfriend. So apparently he's into role play. Nothing wrong with that, but he's a weirdo. Larry would share Marjorie with some of his friends. Marjorie was absolutely disgusted by this behavior. And during an orgy at their home with another couple, Marjorie tried to commit suicide. She ended up trying to commit suicide several times throughout her daughter's childhood. When Melinda, the youngest, the one that we're mainly focusing on today, when Melinda was 9, Larry had Marjorie gang raped.
The
And
fuck?
after he was done having her gang raped, she tried to drown herself. And then also after the gang rape, Marjorie refused to have sex with Larry for a month until one night Larry raped her as their three daughters overheard the ordeal through a closed door. In 1986, Marjorie refused to let Larry go home with two women that he met at a bar. So he beat Marjorie so badly that she was hospitalized. He's a gem.
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of
Later,
curious if the kids are his.
I don't know. That's interesting. But
I
Larry
mean,
was
there's a lot of chefs in that kitchen, if you know what I mean.
for beating Marjorie so badly and her being hospitalized. Larry was convicted of battery. I don't know if he did any real time on that. I don't think he did. But he was convicted of it. It's unclear of the extent of Larry's abuse on his daughters and other children. There's several testimonies during the trial for Melinda that he fondled Melinda as an infant.
Yeah.
He also molested his wife Marjorie's 13-year-old sister when him and Marjorie were first married.
Which was prior to him serving overseas then. So he can't claim that that's when he got fucked up.
You're a quick one. He also molested his daughter's cousin. Her name's Teddy, from ages 10 to 14. So he's just a real piece of garbage. Both of Larry's older daughters said that Larry molested them. Melinda, however, never admitted to being molested. However, she did sleep in the same bed as her father until he rolled out and left the family when she was 14. So,
Ew.
yeah. So essentially, they shared a bedroom.
That's
In court,
disgusting.
Teddy, the cousin, testified to an incident where Larry tied up his 3 daughters in the garage and raped them in like one at a time. Larry was also verbally abusive, but I feel like that's the minor of everything that he's done to these poor kids.
Yeah.
He also fired a handgun intentionally, missing Melinda's older sister, Michelle, when she was only 7 years old. So he shot it in her direction, but intentionally missed her, but just shot it at her. Again, he's a gem. He would also humiliate his daughters in front of other family members and people that would come over by finding their dirty underwear and sniffing it in front of everyone.
Now, I know they couldn't do this because he ties them up, rapes them, beats them, does whatever. But that's when it's like, Dad, those are yours. Just
Right?
saying. I know if that were me, I'd be murdered that evening. But just saying, in my mind, that's really, yeah, those are yours. Clearly, look at the leg hole. This is for my waist.
Oh, God, Claire. This one made me laugh. But for 2 years, when Melinda was 5 years old, Marjorie and Larry were deeply involved in the Graceland Baptist Church. They renounced their drinking and swinging ways while they were members.
Well, naturally, he's going to turn to pedophilia.
Oh, no. He becomes a Baptist lay preacher. I don't know what that means exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Marjorie was a school nurse. When this one kind of made me angry, but when Melinda was between 5 and 7 years old, the church arranged for her to be taken to a hotel room alone with a 50-year-old man for a 5-hour exorcism.
Yeah. And did it involve his penis?
So Melinda won't talk about it. So
Then that's a yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it's a mockery of the things people will do as adults under the guise of the church or whatever thing's supposed to be legitimate. And I don't care what you're saying. That you naturally got to go to a hotel with a 5-year-old to do an exorcism. Makes total sense. Let's do that.
Yeah. Well,
anywho, so
yeah. So this one made me laugh. Larry decides to become a marriage counselor for the church.
Naturally.
Mm-hmm.
When you can't do, teach.
Eventually, during one of his one-on-one counseling sessions, he tried to rape one of the wives he was counseling.
He was just going to show her how to do it.
Oh my God, Claire. You're on a roll today. Look at you. The parents left the church after the rape attempt, and they resumed drinking. I guess they were just like, fuck it.
Well, we tried. I gave it a good try. Let's just go back to what we know.
Yeah.
This isn't fun anymore. She ran away.
He didn't like the chase. It was too much work.
Yeah, well, he was getting older. He's less fit, so Let's go back to the bondage. Then he can just roll over and pork somebody.
In November 1990, Marjorie attacked Larry with a knife
Yeah.
because she caught him spying on Melinda and her friend. She stabbed him. She tried to stab him, and he ended up going to the hospital because he stopped her stabbing attempt by grabbing the knife. So he had boo-boos on his hand.
Well, I'm confused because he's done a lot worse of shit and she didn't stab him. So the peeping Tom thing, that's where the line was drawn in the sand, and she should have stabbed him in the eye with a fucking spoon for all he deserved. Just saying.
Well, Larry has had enough of Marjorie's shit, so he files for divorce.
Wait, enough of her shit?
Mm-hmm. So he files for divorce, moves to Avon Park, Florida, and remarried. He left his whole family. Melinda was crushed, and eventually Larry severed all contact with his daughters.
They're better off for it.
Yeah. Well, Melinda was 14 at the time, and
was his snuggle buddy.
Yeah, well, she doesn't make it too long before she ends up with her own mess. But we're going to pause on Melinda, and we're going to move on to Lori Tackett and her background, because I feel like for you to understand what these four girls do to Shanda, it's kind of important to know the background, not to excuse the behavior, but just for background. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Lori Tackett, she was born Mary Lorraine Tackett. She goes by Lori. She was born in Madison, Indiana on October 5th, 1974. Lori's mother was a strict, super religious Pentecostal Christian. Her father worked in a factory, and he had 2 felony convictions in the 1960s. Lori claims that she was molested at age 5 and 12.
Just those two, or like 5 to 12?
No, it just says she was molested by somebody at age 5 and then also at age 12.
Huh.
I don't know. But in May 1989, Lori's mother found out that Lori was changing her clothes once she got to school. Mind you, she was only changing into jeans. But whatever.
What from what though?
I guess from her school uniform or whatever her mom was sending her to school in. Supposedly during this confrontation about changing her clothes once she got to school, her mom tried to strangle her. Social workers became involved with the Tackett family. And at this point, Lori's parents agreed to have CPS involved with their family and be able to make unannounced visits to prove that there was no actual child abuse going on. But Lori and her mother would have frequent conflicts, nothing to have the kids removed, just Lori liked to act out. And now that she felt like she had protection of CPS, she decides to act like a little shit. Her mother found out that one of the other girls that we'll talk about, her name's Hope, Rippy, her father had purchased his daughter a Ouija board to play with her friends with. And Lori's mother was furious, shows up at the Rippy house and demands the board be burned and the house be exorcised.
Oy.
Mm-hmm. Like, this lady. I get like banning your kid from going over there if you feel that strongly about it, but you're not going to come up into my house, demand I burn something that I bought for my kid, and then
take your crazy ass on.
Right?
Burn your sage somewhere else, lady.
Yeah, it's just crazy. After Lori's 15th birthday, she becomes more rebellious and becomes fascinated with the occult. She starts pretending to be possessed by Diana the vampire to impress her friends.
Okay. Although, I guess me and Tara used to pretend we were dinosaurs.
Were you 15?
No, it wasn't cool then.
Okay, well, she's pretending at 15. I feel like...
Did she bite anybody?
I don't know.
I feel like that's a requirement if she's going to be a vampire.
Maybe she's just doing like that. I want to suck your blood.
Or running into the shadows.
Maybe. Or like hissing if the sun landed on her. Some, who knows?
No, I don't know. I haven't met a vampire.
Okay. Anyway, in early 1991, Lori starts to engage in self-harm. Like she starts self-mutilating, and she also began to date a girl who was also self-mutilating. Lori's parents learned of her self-mutilation and checked her into a hospital on March 19th, 1991. Doctors prescribed her an antidepressant and sent her home. 2 days later, Lori and her girlfriend decided to slit their wrists, and they slit them so deeply that she had to be hospitalized and eventually was put into a psychiatric ward. I feel like shame on the doctor that just gave her antidepressants and sent her home. Probably should have held her a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Lori was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and having hallucinations since she was a young child. She was released from the hospital on April 12th, 1991. So she was hospitalized for almost a month.
To get her meds right.
Perhaps. Lori dropped out of school in September of 1991. And then she moved out of her parents' house and began couch surfing in October of 1991, at which point she met the girl we just talked about, Melinda Lovelace, in November of 1991. So we've got our Melinda, who we just talked about, her dad Larry being a underwear borrowing pervert. And now she's met this girl that's all about committing suicide and pretending to be a vampire.
A winner.
Yep. In December of the same year, her father promised to buy her a car if she would move back home. I don't know if that makes me a bad parent or not, but if my kid was acting out and started couch surfing, I would not bribe them with a vehicle to come home, because I feel like giving them wheels just makes it that much easier for them to.
Yeah.
Lori decided to move back home, but she still spent most of her time over at Melinda Lovelace's house. And I guess now that since Larry's out of the house, it's a bit safer. Okay, so we've talked about Melinda Lovelace. We've talked about Lori Tackett. Now we're going to talk about Hope Rippey. Hope Rippey was born in Madison, Indiana on June 9th, 1976. Hope's father was an engineer at a power plant. Her parents were divorced in February of 1984, and she moved with her mother and her siblings to Quincy, Michigan for 3 years. Eventually, her parents resumed their relationship in 1987, and they moved back to Madison, Indiana. So Hope was reunited with her friend Lori Tackett, our fourth assailant, Tony Lawrence. So I know this is super confusing, but so Hope is friends with Lori, Lori's friends with Melinda, and then Hope is also friends with the girl that we haven't spoke about yet, which is Tony. Does that make sense? So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well,
it's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is, but it's kind of like I know who your friend is, but I'm not really friends with them kind of deal. But it's somebody you hang out with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One of those. So these four girls know each other just through each other. Just like Melinda and Lori, Hope began self-mutilation at age 15. And Hope's parents also thought Lori Tackett was a bad influence for their daughter.
Sounds like she is.
So other than Hope's parents getting divorced and then eventually getting back together, she really didn't have a whole lot of at-home stressors like Lori and Melinda did. But once she was back to hanging out with Lori, she started cutting herself. So
it was the cool thing to do.
Apparently. All right, now let's talk about our fourth girl, or I guess fifth girl, but she's our fourth assailant, and that would be Tony Lawrence. She was born in Madison, Indiana on February 14th, 1979. She's a Valentine's Day baby. Tony's father was a boilermaker, and she was close friends with Hope Rippey, the girl we just talked about. Now, Tony does have an abusive past. She was abused by a relative at age 9. I believe she was raped at 9 by a relative. And then age 14, she was raped by a teenage boy that she knew.
What the hell's going on in Indiana?
Right?
No means
Police.
no.
Well, and I've listened to a lot of other podcasts, and there's so many cases from Indiana. Like, it's
Indiana, get your shit together.
right. Come on, people.
Let's discuss consent in Indiana today.
Starting at a young age, apparently, because they're so young. 14? I don't know. Anyway, police issued an order for the teenage boy to stay away from, like a protective order for the teenage boy to stay away from Tony. She was put into counseling after the sexual assault, but eventually quit going. Tony then became promiscuous and she started to self-mutilate, and she was also suicidal. She attempted suicide in 8th grade. Yeah. All right. So that's the background on our 4 assailants and our victim. Now, 14-year-old Melinda Lovelace began dating a girl named Amanda Havren in 1990. After Melinda's piece of shit father, Larry, ran out of the house and left the family, it's reported that Melinda began to act out, and Marjorie had remarried. So mom's preoccupied, dad's gone. Melinda began getting into fights at school and was showing signs of depression. So they put her in counseling. In March 1991, Melinda came out to her mother as being gay, and her mother was angry at first, but eventually accepted it. I mean, it's kind of cool that Melinda felt comfortable enough to tell her mom at age 14 that she's gay, especially back in the 90s. I feel like that was still kind of...
That's not the way I took it. I didn't take it as a closeness as much as like...
maybe to piss her off.
Yes, like 14's that age.
Yeah, that's true.
And that like oh, you don't like this? Well, guess what? She's not just my friend. She's my girlfriend. And then watch that.
That's entirely possible.
Because I would say if they had a close relationship and she was worried about how she'd take it, and she wouldn't have told her at 14.
Yeah. That's probably most likely the way it went down, especially because at 14, that's when her dad left and she was probably acting out. Not saying she was acting out sexually. I'm saying she was acting out just to try to piss people off.
Well, that's what 14-year-olds do anyway, is act out. They push boundaries. They find out what is going to get them in trouble anyhow.
Yeah.
But anger makes you brave.
That's true. Well, once her mom accepted it, Melinda and her girlfriend Amanda's relationship broke down. Now, they never officially broke up. They just kind of early on ghosted each other, I guess.
It's fizzling out because it's okay now.
Yeah,
which
pretty much.
Checkmate, mom.
Right. Amanda then meets our victim, Shanda Sharer. So Melinda's girlfriend, that's now kind of not the girlfriend, but not officially broken up, meets 12-year-old Shanda. Okay. They meet during the fall semester, and at this point, Amanda's about 13 or 14, and Shanda's 11 or 12. Which, at 11 or 12, I wasn't thinking about whatever.
6?
Yeah. Let alone whether I was straight or gay or whatever.
Yeah.
But Amanda and Shanda did not like each other at first, and they got into a fight, and they were given detention for the altercation. And while the girls were sitting in detention, I guess they got to chit-chatting, and they became friends. So...
well, it was an effective punishment then.
Yeah, it worked out, kind of. Eventually, Shanda and Amanda began a relationship, and they started exchanging romantic letters. Now,
this punishment took a turn for a weird.
Yeah. Well, I watched and read some other articles, and it kind of makes me angry because from what I read, Amanda was pursuing Shanda, and Shanda wasn't really interested in her, but Amanda wouldn't leave her alone.
Well, like we gotta take into consideration we're in Indiana. No doesn't mean no. It means try harder and wait for me to be down a dark alley.
Pretty much. But Shanda, now again, my mind is blown because she is like 11 or 12. There's reports that she was like dating a boy. Not saying that you can't have multiple boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever, but she wasn't really interested in Amanda. She was interested in this boy that she was dating, but Amanda continuously was pursuing Shanda. So
Perhaps it was an attention thing rather than.
from what I read and what I watched, there's like a little snippet, and I'll cite it so people can watch it. But on YouTube, there's a little snippet off of Dr. Phil where this chick Amanda, as an adult, is interviewed, and Dr. Phil straight up calls her out on her shit. Like, she uses Shanda to try to piss off Melinda. So she's only, in a lot of people's opinions, Amanda was only pursuing Shanda trying to make Melinda jealous and not out of actual interest in Shanda, which we'll get into all of this further on because it really makes me angry what happens to Shanda, because Amanda really didn't give a shit about her.
Yeah, all girl drama.
Yeah, like, ugh. Amanda starts sending Shanda love letters. Melinda sees this new relationship developing and becomes jealous. In early 1991, about a year later, Amanda and Shanda are at a school dance together. And so some of the reports say that they went as girlfriends, and others say they went as friends. So I guess it depends on what you want to believe. Melinda was furious when she saw the two of them together and confronted the girls at the dance. Melinda and Amanda never officially ended their relationship, so Melinda was accusing Amanda of cheating on her with Shanda. However, Melinda was also dating someone else.
One of those "we didn't say we were exclusive" excuses.
Kind of like her dad, in the sense that it's okay that Larry cheated on Marjorie, but Marjorie couldn't cheat on him. Same idea. I don't want you, but nobody else can have you. One of those such situations. Late in October, Amanda and Shanda attend a festival together. Melinda begins discussing killing Shanda, like outright, just starts telling people she's going to kill her and threatening Shanda in public. Shanda's parents were concerned about the relationship with Amanda, so they decided to have Shanda transferred to a Catholic school in late November. Melinda was sending Amanda letters threatening to kill Shanda. Does that make sense? So yep. Melinda Loveless sending letters trying to kill Shanda. Amanda claims that she gave the letters containing the death threats towards Shanda to a youth prosecutor, and the youth prosecutor never did anything with the letters. Just depends on what you want to believe.
How do they know that they were even out there if they never were delivered?
Because that's just what Amanda's claiming.
But then nobody would know they existed. Doesn't make any sense.
No. It's all like, it's a mess of a case. Like, it's a mess. And I don't know. I don't necessarily believe this chick Amanda. Like, I feel like she's a major instigator in this, and spoiler alert, she gets off scot-free. On the night of January 10th, 1992, Tony, she's 15, and Hope, age 15, and Lori, age 17, drove in Lori's car to Melinda's house. Okay, so Tony, Hope, and Lori
had a car.
Yeah, way to go, Dad. So Tony, Hope, and Lori go over to Melinda's house. Hope and Tony were friends of Lori's, but they'd never met Melinda before. And so the three girls get to Melinda's house. They borrow some of Melinda's clothes. Everybody changes their clothes. I don't know. It's weird. I never went over to my friends' houses to change my clothes, but whatever. Let alone somebody I've never met before and change my clothes. While they're at Melinda's house, Melinda shows the girls a knife that she wanted to use to scare Shanda with. So keep in mind, Shanda's only 12. These girls are all 15 and 16 and 17. Melinda told Hope and Tony that she disliked Shanda for being a copycat and stealing Amanda away from her. So Lori let Hope drive the four girls to Jeffersonville, where Shanda stayed with her dad on the weekends. The girls stopped off at McDonald's to ask for directions because these are pre-GPS days. They arrived at Shanda's shortly before dark, Melinda sends Tony and Hope to go knock on the door and introduce themselves as friends of Amanda's. And they lie to Shanda and invite her to come with them to go meet up with Amanda. So they're trying to get Shanda to come out of Dad's house and come with them. But and they told Shanda that Amanda was waiting at this place called the Witch's Castle, also known as Mistletoe Falls. Witch's Castle is a ruined stone house, and it's on an isolated hill with a view of the Ohio River. Shanda said, I can't go because my dad's awake, but told Tony and Hope come back around midnight and she'll sneak out. So Melinda was pissed, but Tony and Hope were like, hey, it's all good. Around midnight, we'll come back. We'll get her to come out. You can scare her. Everything will be fine. Hope and Tony, both 15, and Melinda and Lori, they decide they're going to go to some punk rock show to see the band Sun Spring. Hope and Tony both end up getting bored with the music and found two boys and decided to have sex in Lori's car. The four girls eventually leave and they head back to Shanda's house. On the way, Melinda Loveless, she said she couldn't wait to kill Shanda. They arrived at Shanda's house around 12:30 in the morning, and Tony refused to go get Shanda. She was just like, no, you said you were just going to scare her. Now you're talking about killing her. I want no part of this. I'm not going to the door. So Lori Tackett and Hope Rippey went to the door, and Melinda hid in the back seat with the blanket and a knife. So Shanda at first didn't want to leave with Lori and Hope, and they told her that Amanda was still waiting at the witch's castle. So Shanda didn't trust her gut. Always trust your gut, people. Always trust your gut. She changed out of her pajamas and left with the girls. As they approached the car, Hope was asking Shanda questions about her relationship with Amanda, but could really even answer her. Melinda pops out of the back seat and she presses a knife to the 12-year-old Shanda's throat and demands answers about her sexual relationship with Amanda.
I think it's crazy 12 and having a sexual relationship at all.
Yeah, right? Like, these girls are,
and I hate to say
so
it
young
because it seems so like, but where are all these girls' parents?
I know.
They're just gallivanting around, just having sex at concerts, willy-nilly, cars gone, all hours, that it's midnight. Where are your children?
Yeah. But I think it's one of those cases of like, hey, everybody's going to somebody else's house.
Yeah.
And parents don't call and check and verify. Lori told, so they hop in the car, they start driving towards the witch's castle. Lori Tackett told the girls the witch's castle was once owned by 9 witches, and the townspeople burned it down to get rid of the witches. And once they arrived to the witch's castle, they took the weeping Shanda inside and tied her arms and legs with a rope. Melinda taunted the terrified 12-year-old. She told Shanda that she had pretty hair and wondered how pretty she'd be if she were to cut it all off. I don't know. I'm guessing maybe they were talking about scalping her since she brought a knife. I don't know. But Melinda proceeds to remove Shanda's rings and handed each one of them to the other girls. And at some point, 17-year-old Lori Tackett took Shanda's Mickey Mouse watch and was dancing around to the tune that it played. Lori also helped terrorize Shanda by telling her that the house was filled with human remains and that hers were going to be next. Lori goes out to the car, grabs a shirt, and sets it on fire in front of Shanda to scare her. But then she realizes that somebody might see the flames, and she quickly puts it out because she didn't want a passing car to spot it. So the 4 girls decide they better get out of there, and they grab Shanda and they left. During the drive, Shanda pleaded with the other 4 girls to please take her back home. Melinda ordered Shanda to remove her bra. So I'm guessing they untied her because I don't know how you remove your bra if your hands are tied. But
maybe she needed it because her dad was short on undies.
Well, Melinda takes Shanda's bra from her and hands it over to 15-year-old Hope, who took off her own bra and replaced it with Shanda's while driving in the car.
What?
Yeah. So Hope's
She swapped with a 12-year-old. That couldn't possibly be very supportive.
That's literally what I got. First of all, she's talented because I don't think I could take my bra off and then put another one on while driving.
Well, let's
Like
face
that's
it. It was a training bra, so she just swapped because she needed a sports bra. So I go back to she needed some support because those things needed to be strapped down.
so the next thing I wrote down, which I will literally take a picture of and send to you later, said itty bitty titty committee because if a 12-year-old's bra fits a 15-year-old,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
like
really why they were upset. She was either an early developer or somebody was not well endowed.
the girls get lost and they decide to stop at a gas station and ask for directions and they threw a blanket over Shanda.
That's not
Um,
suspicious. Pay
she's
no
t-
attention to this.
yeah, I like did they make her lay down? Because I feel like somebody's sitting up in the back seat with a blanket over their heads, just kind of weird.
Yeah.
But and I guess she was tied up again because I would have taken a run for it. Lori went inside to ask for directions. Tony called a boy that she knew in Louisville and chatted with him for a little bit because she was worried. But again, it's the middle of the night because they just picked Shanda up at 12:30 and some time has passed. So it's like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Is this
And
not a weekday, weekend? I assume it'd be a weekend or a
I'm
Friday.
assuming it's a weekend. But where's the boy's parents? Like, this is before cell phones. So that means the house phone rang. He answered it. It's 1 a.m. Where's his parents at?
Yeah.
But anywho, she doesn't mention the fact that they just kidnapped Shanda. She just chit chats with them. The girls hop back in the car. They get lost again. They stop at another gas station. Hope and Tony spot two more boys that they know. Mind you, these are the two girls that just had sex in the car during the concert. But they spot two more boys that they know and they decide to go flirt and chat with them. Eventually, the girls are at the edge of some woods near Lori's home in Madison, Indiana. And Lori leads all the girls to a dark, abandoned building in a densely wooded area. Hope and Tony are scared and they decide they want no part in this. We're going to go wait in the car. Well, Melinda and Lori made Shanda strip down to her underwear, and 16-year-old Melinda begins to beat 12-year-old Shanda with her fists. Melinda repeatedly slams Shanda's face into her knee over and over, and Shanda's mouth split open from her own braces. Melinda then tried to slash Shanda's throat, but the knife that she brought was too dull. So they got this 12-year-old girl down to her undies and beating the crap out of her. And now they just tried to slice her throat, but wasn't sharp enough to slice all the way through. And they made Hope get out of the car and help hold down Shanda. And Melinda and Lori took turns with this dull knife and stabbing Shanda in the chest.
The fuck?
They strangled Shanda with the rope until she was unconscious. Lori and Melinda thought she was dead because now they've beat her, they've stabbed her, and they've strangled her with a rope. So they scoop up her body and they stick her in the trunk and they told Tony and Hope that Shanda was dead. The girls drive back to Lori's house to go get sodas and get cleaned up. Well, while inside, the girls heard Shanda screaming from inside the trunk. Lori gets upset. She walks out to the trunk. She brought a knife with her, and she begins to stab Shanda several more times with a paring knife from the kitchen. She returned to the other girls. She was again covered in Shanda's blood. Again, I ask, where the fuck are the parents?
Yeah.
After getting cleaned up, Lori tells the other girls, like she tells their future with rune stones. I don't know anything about rune stones, but this is the same girl that's like interested in the occult and all that. So I don't know. Around 2:30 a.m., so 2 hours after they originally abducted Shanda, Tony and Hope decide they don't want to take any more part in this crazy crap that Lori and Melinda are pulling, and they're going to stay at Lori's house while Lori and Melinda go country cruising. They drive to a nearby town of Can or Kane, I'm not sure which, how you pronounce it, Caan. During their drive, they hear Shanda crying and making gurgling noises from the trunk.
What the fuck?
Yep. So Lori stops the car. They open the trunk, and Shanda sat up. They said her eyes were rolled back in her head and she was unable to speak. So Lori begins to beat Shanda with a tire iron. She beat her until she didn't move and she was silent. Lori claimed that she felt Shanda's skull cave in. Lori apparently told Melinda to smell it. Melinda and Lori also sexually assaulted Shanda with the tire iron. They assaulted Shanda with the tire iron for hours
I would
while the
assume she's
girls,
already dead.
she's not. So this poor girl has been beaten, stabbed, strangled, stabbed some more, and now she's been beaten until her skull has cracked. She's been sexually assaulted with a tire iron, and they would close the trunk, drive around, pull over, and then to get out and sexually assault her some more with the tire iron and beat her some more with the tire iron. Like they're brutalizing this poor girl. Drove around for hours though, just joyriding, beating her, torturing her. Melinda and Lori eventually returned back to Lori's house to get themselves cleaned up again.
It's got to be
And
nearing like the sun coming up.
yeah, Hope apparently asked about Shanda, and Lori laughed as she described the torture that they put her through. And them laughing about it, the conversation woke up Lori's mother, who yelled at Lori for being out late and told her to take the girls home. That would not be my reaction. I would tell the girls to be quiet, not go drive around, because it's like, what, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning?
Right?
All 4 girls hop in the car and drove to a burn pile where they open the trunk and stare at Shanda's bloody body. Tony Lawrence absolutely refused to participate. Like, she wanted no part of this. She was done. She didn't want to do any of this. But Hope sprayed Shanda with Windex and said, "You're not looking so hot now, are you?" As all 4 girls drove out to a gas station, they pumped gasoline into the car. Lori bought a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, poured out the Pepsi, and refilled it with gasoline. They drove to an area known by Hope off of Route 421. Tony stayed in the car while Lori and Hope wrapped Shanda in a blanket. Shanda was still alive. This poor baby, she's still alive, tough little 12-year-old. But they wrap her up in the blanket and they carry her to a field near a gravel road. Lori made Hope pour the gasoline on Shanda's body, and then they set her on fire. Melinda was not convinced that Shanda was dead, so they returned with more gasoline to pour on her corpse. Afterwards, the girls went for breakfast at McDonald's around 9:30 in the morning. Like nothing
Like
happened.
just casually.
Yep. They're overheard laughing about Shanda's body looking like the sausages they were eating.
What the hell?
Just pure evil. Tony calls a friend to tell him about the murder of Shanda. Like, I mean, I got to give Tony some credit. She didn't participate once she heard Melinda say, she couldn't wait to kill Shanda. She refused to participate in anything after that, but she did still stick around. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
stuck in the sense of it's not her car, she's not driving. So,
yeah, but the part that gets me is when Melinda and Lori left to go joyriding and left Tony and Hope at Lori's house. Why didn't she do something then? She
I'm
could have
gonna
called 911. She could have called her parents to come get her. She had options.
I'm gonna hope that she thought they weren't actually gonna do anything. Like,
Well, but at that point they had already stabbed her.
eh,
You know what I mean? Like they'd
yeah.
already stabbed her multiple times. Where was I? So Tony tells a friend about the murder. Lori drops Tony and Hope off at their homes and then returns to her own home with Melinda Lovelace. So then Melinda calls Amanda and tells her that they killed Shanda. Friend Crystal Wathen comes over to Melinda's house, and Melinda and Lori tell Crystal about the murder. So this is 3 different people that these girls have told about killing Shanda. Melinda and Crystal and Lori all drive to go pick up Amanda. They all go back to Melinda's house and they proceed to tell Amanda and Crystal again the horrific details of Shanda's murder. Both Amanda and Crystal were like, I don't think I believe you. This sounds like a horrible story and I don't think you're capable of it. So Lori takes both girls outside. She pops open her trunk and proudly shows off the blood and Shanda's bloody handprints on the inside of the trunk, and even points out one of Shanda's bloody socks that were still in the trunk. Amanda was horrified and asked to be taken home. So Lori and Melinda and Crystal take Amanda back to her house. When they pull up to her home, Melinda kissed Amanda and said, "Please don't tell anyone." Amanda promised before going inside that she would not say anything, and she didn't.
What the hell?
So this girl that she actively pursued to make her girlfriend or ex-girlfriend jealous, she literally put this 12-year-old girl in the position of being the
Victim?
yeah. And now here she's been brutalized and you're not going to say anything. You're going to say nothing. It's disgusting. I feel like she should have been held responsible also, but we're still getting there. So anyway, she promised she wouldn't say anything. And then on January 11th, so later that day, the murder was between the 10th and the 11th. So on the day that she was murdered and burned, two brothers were hunting when they pulled onto that gravel road, and they thought that it was a mannequin that was burned. And then as they approached it to just go check it out, it's never a mannequin, guys. Okay. It's never a mannequin. They go over there and they realize it's the remains of a child. So they call police. It's around 10:55 in the morning. Officer David Cam was one of the first reporting officers. Officer David Cam, he's a whole nother case because he was later arrested a few years later for the murder of his entire family, his wife and his two children, 5 and 7. Like that was a messy, like, ugh.
How long after this did he do that?
I think it was like 2000. So about 8 years, but still, it's kind of insane that this officer that's the first responding officer is later arrested for murdering his family. He is acquitted, but I dove down that rabbit hole, and that case is a mess all on its own. So perhaps on another day. Initially, officers thought it was a drug deal gone wrong. I say, what the hell? Because this is clearly a child. Yeah. I don't know what's going on in Indiana that they think a child is involved in a drug deal.
My head went when you were like, it's a drug deal gone wrong. What?
It just makes no sense. But
that'll just clinch the whole men. I don't understand how they think, because that didn't seem like the conclusion to draw from that at all.
No, not at all. It was also noted that Shanda's body was positioned in a suggestive position. I could not find what that means. I'm guessing they left her legs spread open or something. I have no idea. But Shanda's face and hands were burned extra. So they poured extra gasoline on her face and hands because they were hoping that they would not be able to recognize her and they would not be able to identify her. However, if you're going to turn around and tell all kinds of people what you did,
right? It's not going to be that hard to connect the dots when you've told half the town and her parents realize she's not home.
Well, and then again, they're 15-year-olds, so I don't expect them to have any kind of common sense. Clearly, so far, they lack all of. Anyhow, when Stephen Sharer, so Shanda's father, woke up and found that his daughter was not home, he started calling his neighbors. He called her friends. He called relatives all morning trying to track her down. Like, what the heck? Can you imagine being mad at your kid? Like, where the hell are you? Your ass is supposed to be home. And then when you start getting further into the phone call chain and you're like, oh shit,
you're angry.
Nobody knows where she is. I really hope she's okay. If she is okay, she's in so much trouble. But By 1:45 p.m., he contacts his ex-wife, Jacqueline, and they come together to go file a missing persons report. By 8:20 p.m., Hope and Tony were like absolute basket cases, and they show up at the sheriff's office with their parents. They're both absolutely hysterical as they were explaining to officers the events that happened the night before. So detectives had to use dental records to confirm that the burned remains were that of 12-year-old Shanda Sharer. And the coroner reported that Shanda died due to the burns because she was still alive through all of the skull crushing and stabbings and strangulations and all of what she went through. She was still alive. It was the burning alive that killed her. Like,
I'm gonna hope she was passed the fuck out, and even though her body was alive,
yeah,
she was not aware.
I can only hope for the sake of that little girl because that's absolutely brutal.
I don't know if you've ever watched like some of the Survivor accounts, TV shows where people have like these crazy things happen and they are like uh, most recently I saw one about a police officer getting shot and he was shot 13 times and one of the shots goes through his hand and he watches his hand blow backwards and he'd never felt it, but he was just like, whoa, that's weird. But it was like a surreal kind of thing. I'm going to hope that that's the case with her, that all of this horror, it was like a surreal out of body experience of this isn't happening.
Yeah. So when they said that Lori said that she felt Shanda's skull crushing, I was hoping that she was brain dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of along the same lines of what you're
Yeah.
saying.
She's alive, but not alive.
Yeah. The prosecution said they intended to try Melinda, who was 16, and Lori Tackett as adults. So Lori was 17, Melinda 16.
But isn't
However,
it one of those that even being tried as an adult, they're not able to get the death penalty because they were under 18?
I'm not sure how that works. However, quick recap, all four girls, since they had seriously troubling backgrounds,
They get a pass.
with the exception of Hope, who, other than her own self-mutilation, nothing really bad happened to her in her life. She just chose the wrong kids to hang out with.
She was a
You are who you
follower.
hang out with, people. Yeah, super frustrating. But all four of these girls had been physically or sexually abused at the hands of a parent or another adult. Melinda, Lori, and Hope were all self-mutilating at this point. Lori had previously been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and hallucinations. Melinda had the beginning story where she's just like extreme history of abuse and mental health issues. Like she's got the extreme of all four girls. Not that it's a pass. Lori Tackett and Melinda Lovelace were both given 60 years for the murder. Hope Rippey was also given 60 years with 10 years suspended, plus 10 years of medium supervised probation. But on an appeal, a judge reduced the sentence for Hope to 35 years. And then Tony, because she cooperated with police, she was allowed to plead guilty, and she pled guilty to one count of criminal confinement and given the maximum sentence of 20 years. So Lori Tackett, she served almost 26 years of her 60-year sentence, and she was released on the 26th anniversary of the murder. So she was released on January 11th, 2018. Melinda Lovelace, she was released on September 5th, 2019, after serving approximately 27 years.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Hope Rippey, she served 14 years of her 60 or reduced 35-year sentence, and she was released on April 28th, 2006. And Tony Lawrence served 9 years and 2 years probation. She was released on December 14th, 2000. So, but we're not done yet. Due to Melinda's testimony to save her own ass, her father, Larry Lovelace, was arrested in February 1993 because he was arrested for rape, sodomy, sexual battery, but he was arrested for his crimes that occurred between 1968 and 1977. Larry remained in prison for over 2 years while he waited his trial, but the judge threw out all of the charges except for one count of sexual battery because the statute of limitations prevented Larry from being tried for most of his crimes, which I think is bullshit.
Yeah.
I also think Marjorie should have been charged because she sat back and did nothing while her daughters were being abused. And I get it. Abusive relationships are absolutely insane. And I get that people become victims and don't know how to save themselves. It becomes like the do what you can to survive kind of deal. But when she tried to stab her husband and he filed for divorce, she still chose to keep her mouth shut.
Not that I've ever gone at somebody with a knife. It has to be scary as hell to have them catch the blade and just mean mug the shit out of you. That's got to be like a, oh, haha, just kidding.
Larry decides to plead guilty to the one count of sexual battery, and he receives time served and was released in June of 1995. So, screw you, Larry.
Or maybe somebody did.
Maybe. But good old Larry, he tried to sue Floyd County Jail for cruel and unusual punishment. Some of his complaints that he listed were that he was not allowed to sleep in his bed during the day, and he was not allowed to read the newspaper whenever he felt like it.
Wah.
So, yeah, he didn't win that case.
It's almost like it's a punishment.
Yeah, almost. Stephen Sharer, Shanda's grief-stricken father, he ended up dying in 2005 at age 53 of alcoholism. His ex-wife, Jacqueline, she said her ex was so distraught over their daughter's murder. I quote, "He did everything he could to kill himself besides put a gun to his head." And she also said, "He drank himself to death. That man definitely died from a broken heart." Which
That's so sad.
Especially because I think he felt extra guilty because Shanda was in
go. Yeah.
When she was kidnapped. Not really kidnapped, but when she snuck out and then was kidnapped.
But at the same time, I can tell you, there are plenty of times they didn't, well, yeah, mom and dad, that they didn't know where I was.
Well, again, they were divorced at that point, so I feel like you were kind of a shit and took advantage of that.
So definitely did once they both moved out, but definitely still happened while they were both in the house.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not gonna fib and then mom will still try to ground me.
What's crazy is
from another state away.
There was one time I got in trouble because I was at a barbecue at a friend's house with her family. Like there were no other kids there.
Wink, wink.
No, 100%. It was just my high school BFF and me and her parents and like their relatives. And mom called their house over and over because we didn't answer the phone. It was like 10:30 at night. She was pissed and wanted to know where we were. And
sleeping.
We were outside. And she said she was angry and wanted me to be taken home because I wasn't where I said I was going to be. What I was just out in the yard. But anywho, I guess that's why we're both still alive and adults.
True. But
maybe
there were plenty of opportunities for that to not have ended the same.
Maybe for you. I grew up with a different.
Yes.
We had the same mother, but grew up with different mothers. Figure that one out, people. So an update on Melinda Loveless. She now trains dogs. And every year on the anniversary of her daughter's murder, Jacqueline Vaught donates a dog named Shanda for Melinda to train. A lot of people
memorial.
Yes. She's also on that Dr. Phil special, and she says that she doesn't care what people think. It's her right to do what she wants in the memory of her daughter, which I agree, it is her right. I just feel like I personally feel like it's slightly disrespectful to her daughter's memory to name a dog after her daughter and then submit that dog to her daughter's murderer to train. Like, I don't get it. And I guess that's her way of taunting Melinda. I have no idea. It's sick, in my opinion. Amanda Havron was never charged with anything, even though she pretty much instigated everything, and never called police when she found out that they had murdered Shanda.
I feel like that could also be the whole, as a teen, you can play the card of she was afraid to say anything.
But again, I call bullshit.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's legitimate, but I feel like that she was given a pass because there's the legitimate, they opened the trunk, they showed it, and she could just say she had a fear.
Yeah, but then she got taken home. She promised not to say anything. And even now on the Dr. Phil special, I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure, and this could just be my own irritation that remembers it in a messed up way, but I'm pretty sure she said that she promised she wouldn't say anything, and Shanda was already dead, so what's the difference? Like, that was her mentality with it.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, but the thing is if she actually gave a shit about Shanda, she should have said something. At that point, Melinda's gone. She's safe in her home with her parents. She should have said something.
Yeah.
But anyhow, if you want to read or find out more information about this case, I'll put the links on there. There's an hour video by Stephanie Harlow on YouTube. It's pretty good. It really dives into how Amanda was really an instigator in all of this. And then there's also that YouTube video from Dr. Phil that's about 6 minutes, by True Crime Videos. But anywho,
teenage girls are scary. That's what you should take from this.
That's one hell of a messy case. I mean, I'm glad that Larry didn't get away scot-free. I feel like the adults in this situation all were contributing factors to, like Marjorie, she got remarried and kind of got distracted on actually parenting her little brat. But
we did not do that case. You probably talked with it to Jason or thought about doing it, but I assure you 100% I was waiting for something to blip across. And I'm like, yeah, I would remember that.
Oh, gosh. Good to know.
That you do. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the